So good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Gilles Forester. I'm working in the HPC group at EPFL, and I will talk about a collaboration that we have between us and the LASTRO, which is the Laboratoire d'Astrophysique at EPFL. So a bit of a disclaimer. Actually, I know nothing about, or almost nothing about astrophysics. I'm a HPC software developer, so please bear with me. I know there's one specialist at least in the audience. Right. So what is gravitational lensing? So this is a picture taken from the Hubble telescope. Right, you can see. So those spots are either galaxies. So this is one galaxy, and you have stars, and so you have numerous objects in the sky. And you can see that there's a specific artifact there. This is called an Einstein ring. And so this ring has nothing to do with any malfunction in the telescope. This is a particular effect that's happening when you take a picture of the universe sometimes. And most of you know of this particular effect because it's extremely similar what you get with the lensing of glass. So, for example, so this is a wine glass, and if you take this wine glass and you put it right in front of you, between the candle and your eye, you will see exactly the same pattern. Okay. So, obviously, if you have a different angle, you will get a different shape, and you can see those. Actually, I'll show pictures of this. You can see those effects also. So. Actually, what's happening here is exactly the same phenomenon that's happening there. Is that you have an object that's emitting, so a star or a galaxy or something, and it goes through some kind of lens inside space, into space, and the light is refracted. Okay. What is actually refracting or deviating the path of the light? Has been theoretized by Albert Einstein by general gravity, the theory of relativity, and so that was in 1916, and where he said that mass can actually bend the path of light. Okay, and this is exactly what's happening here. We have a huge object in space, and this object, when it's placed between us and what we want to see, is bending the light around it. The first gravitational lensing paper appeared in 1936. Then there was Fritz Zwicky said that this could be done by a galaxy or a cluster of galaxy or something like this. And then it was first observed many years later in 1979. And this is a picture. Okay, so that was taken from the Hubble telescope. That's what the astronomers saw in the first place. And they saw exactly, so they took a picture of space, and they saw exactly the same, it's a quasar actually, and they saw exactly the same quasar nearly close to each other. And they said that it's impossible to get two quasars identical so close to each other, so they concluded that it was the first time they saw the gravitational lensing in effect. So optical, so gravitational lensing is actually an optical artifact that is created by a dense mass distribution. So first, they thought it was galaxy, but then people concluded that dark matter could also obviously bend light, or black holes. So if you have a parametric lens model, you can actually, some definitions of characteristics of what you consider is between you and the galaxy that you want to observe. If you are able to find a parametric lens model, you can use this gravitational lensing to actually recover the characteristics of what is between you and what you want to observe. Okay? And this is extremely powerful because, for example, dark matter is the only way to interact with matter, the classic matter. That's the only way we can see dark matter into space. So this is trigonometry, standard trigonometry, and you can derive the 2D lensing potential, which is the characteristics of the lenses, and you compute the variation of the angle with the gradient. Okay, and one example of such a gradient is given by this equation. So we have to evaluate this a lot. So this is the algorithm that we implemented. The first step of this algorithm is to compute all the gradients for all the pixels in the image. So what I showed you before, this equation, those are the parameters that you put inside your for the lens that you put inside your equation. So this is a parametric model, and then we compute all of the gradients of the pixels of the image that we get. And this is taking around 90% of time to solution. This is just an example. There are tens or dozens of such equations that we need to solve. It's quite a complicated one because it uses transcendental functions like a logarithm and arc cosinus and that kind of things, which is or arctangent, which is a bit difficult to evaluate easily, but okay. So this is what we did. We used a mapping algorithm, a technique in order to map this directly to, this is a Skylake, I think, to map this directly to the cores using high performance data structures like SOA. We use most of the data structure we are using is SOA, and we have implicit and explicit vectorization of this. So we had to rework everything from scratch, taken from the original code, and we inserted the vectorization and data level parallelism from there. Second step, so it's two parts. The second step is actually unlensing every image that we see, so every bit of the image that we want to treat from the image plane to the source plane. So using the gradients that we computed before, we unlens the image, okay? Then we take, so that's the yellow dots. We take the barycenter and then we relens the barycenter, okay? And it gives us the red triangles. If the parametric model that we used is correct, we should be close to the original spots. That's how we recover the characteristics of the lenses that we have in between the two. So this is done mostly with. So we involve data level parallelism, but there's also a thread level parallelism, which is working quite well in this case. Step two is so we compute the chi-square, so that's the difference between the original image and what we computed. Okay, so it's kind of a norm that we compute, and then we pass this chi-square to a Bayesian, MCMC, so it's Monte Carlo Markov chain Monte Carlo code, and we use MPI in order to do that. So the MCMC code is taking care of the optimization of the parameters in order to find the real set so the set of parameters that is going to match reality. All right, so this is the whole algorithm, and that's why I said no separation of concern, because we are directly mapping the science, if you want, the algorithm to the hardware. So we started so below with the equations, and so that's the core, that's the node, that's the multi-node, and that's the full machine. All right. Okay, so some results. So this is the gradient benchmark. We use the 5,000 by 5,000 pixel image. 69 sources, and so that's the images, the bits of images that we have everywhere. And so we tested on AVX. So with AVX2, it's a Broadwell system, and AVX512, which was Xeon Phi CPU that we have at EPFL. So that's the original code. Okay. We inserted the Lens2 HPC array of structure in order to compare with the original code, and you can see that with AVX2 we are getting a speed up out of the box by just recoding in C the code, which it does not appear. So we got a speed down with AVX512, which was kind of funny, but as soon as we start using the right data structures, the speed up is taking off. Okay, so that's just the difference is just the data structure, and then we have the data level parallelism, and we get a very nice factor compared to Lens2 already. So that's one core. Okay, and then AVX512 is already above 10x. Which is very nice. In terms of performance, so the Intel Analyzer is giving us around 6 flops per cycle on AVX2, which is, 35% of peak. And Intel Advisor is giving us 25% of peak for the grid gradient, for the gradient benchmark. Now the distributed, so the grid gradient. So what we do is that we split the image, okay, into subdomains. And so those are going to be taken care of by MPI. And inside, we use the algorithms that I showed you before with data level parallelism and thread level parallelism, or CUDA, so SIMT approach. So a benchmark result here. So with AVX512, so this is on a machine that we have at EPFL. That's the CPU on PISDANT. You can see that the performance is very good. We get a very nice speed up with AVX2. AVX512 is so that's a Skylake Platinum. I think is the top tier one. Is giving excellent result. Even KNL is actually working pretty well. With our code, and that's a P100. That's on the CSCS test system. That's the performance for the P100s, and that's the performance for the V100, which is really impressive. And this includes data transfers. It's not the kernel. It's really the full performance. So in general, for us, thread level parallelism is giving the best bang for your bucks. SOA is so structural array already gives a very nice boot without DLP, but this is mandatory in order to have efficient data level parallelism. And AVX512 is giving a very, very nice results. So we tested explicit and implicit vectorization, and it seems that AVX512 is working very well for implicit vectorization, at least much better than AVX2. Actually, we are not using hand-coded intrinsics anymore. We just use the compiler, and that's fine. Oh yes, and the V100 is also. So the difference in performance might be coming from the scheduling of the warps that is you can tune now, and it looks like he's doing a very good job for us. Okay, so chi-square computation, another benchmark. So we have to compute this formula. So in order to give to the Monte Carlo algorithm, the problem is that we have to recover the distance between the original image and their computed projections. And sometimes, so most of the times, they are not in the same MPI domain. So what we do is we reduce this. So we reduce this computation to rank 0. And we pack everything and we send to rank 0, which is, okay, so yeah, we might want to improve this, but that's what we have right now. In terms of strong scaling, so this is the chi-square benchmark. In terms of strong scaling, this is on Dane GPU. That's the results. We go up to 512 nodes. And you can see that the scaling is stopping around 32 nodes, maybe 64, depends on what you call scaling. But and the problem is that the grid gradient computation on GPU was the bottleneck there, and we are trying to understand what's happening. On Dane multi-core, so pure CPU. It's much better. So so everything scales up to 256 nodes. And again, this is so the limiting factor is the grid gradient, and it's not the MPI reduction or which is going up after a while. But we stop there, which is already very nice because that's around, so it's more than this, but at least 50x compared to LensTool 6. Latest version in about 6 months. So that's what we have. So development, so the code is on C4Science, which is like a GitHub. It's hosted by EPFL. It's for a Swiss institution. Our code is there. And we have unit tests for each kernel, everything. We have a large development project on PSDent in order to tune everything. So GPU, network, that started the 1st of April. So we are going to take care of this problem, hopefully. We are also trying to find a framework that is going to take care of the optimization, because the current code, the current Monte Carlo code doesn't scale beyond 10 instances, if you want. You can spawn 10 processes, but it won't work beyond this. So that's kind of limiting the framework. So we are in contact with the people from the group of Professor Koumoutsakos in ETHZ in order to use their code, which seems to be working quite well and could help us a lot. We have 2 papers. So we just finished one last week, actually. We are going to submit it. What is nice with the way we use it is that we have complete control over the source code. And we actually use this in order to see what happens when we compute everything in single precision. Okay, so we did a mixed precision code where we could change the precision on the fly and see if single precision is worth it. And so the answer is yes, it's worth it, but you need to apply patches of a double precision. So most of the computation is done in single precision, and then we apply patches of a double precision for the computation of the equation that you saw before, where actually it's needed and close to the images. And it's actually working very well. So Marcus did the math, the computations on paper in order to see if the error was not exploding, and I did with Christophe the implementation and everything, and they actually match. It's very nice. It's going to be a very nice paper. We are going to submit this week. And the second one we are working on is the high-performance strong lensing map generation for lens tool. That's something that is not really working very well with the original lens tool, so it's in preparation. That's the results that we are getting. So we using the gradient computation that we had, so that we used before, we can actually compute the second derivative of the whole image in order to control the error of the Monte Carlo method. And that was really poorly implemented in Lens Tool. Because in Lens Tool it takes 765 seconds, and Lens Tool HPC on one GPU takes 1.3 seconds. So you get a speed up of over 500, which is okay. So this means that the code there is an absolute disaster. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point for the implementation, our implementation too. Yeah. Okay. So. A few brownie points. Thanks to Jean-Paul Neb, who's the head of the Lastro group at EPFL, and Jan Estaven and Vittoria Rezzonico, so they are my bosses. It's very nice because they gave us a complete control over what we are doing. They just told us, yeah, our code is not working anymore, please do something. And we had complete green light over anything we wanted to do. It's kind of rare to see this. Also, thanks to Colin and Hussein, because most of what you saw was developed on the CSCS test cluster. And it's extremely important for us to have something like this. We don't have such a cluster at EPFL, and it's very important. So we can't go directly to PISDENK in order to develop. So we need to have something, a small cluster that is well maintained, and we have direct contact with the sysadmins in order to test everything that we want to do. And this is happening with the test cluster. So thank you very much. That was very nice. Okay, that's it. So if you have questions.